So it turns out that 73% of Africans actually want to work remotely, with about 42% of us already working from home at least once a week. However, many international companies hesitate to hire from Africa. One, because they have concerns around things like compliance and working across different time zones and things like that. But two, most importantly, they don't actually know that there's a high level of talent, a high quality of talent available here in Africa. And to be honest, I don't blame them. Let me explain. So in my job as an executive assistant working with a client who's based in Europe, I recently had the opportunity to hire 4 different freelancers who are all based here in Africa. And you guys, let me tell you, it was a whole train wreck. There was no way I was going to hire any of those 4. So, anecdotally speaking, I realized that there's a lot of work that we have to do in order to break these misconceptions. So what I want to do in this video is highlight 5 problems that I think that we have that keep us from getting these jobs, and solutions for us to get more and more of these remote jobs with international companies. So without further ado, let's dive straight into the video. Before we dive into my 5 tips and the 5 reasons that I think most of us don't get hired, let me give you a bit of context. Like I said in the intro, I work as an executive assistant for a client who's based in Europe, and one of my big tasks is hiring freelancers. So the very first time that I had to hire freelancers, I went to Fiverr and I was able to shortlist 4 people who, based on their portfolios, looked like they'd be really good fits. One of them, their profile said they was based in Kenya, another one said they were based in London, another one said they were based in the US, and another one was based where? In Nigeria. Yes, another one was based in Nigeria. Now, the side note to this is I feel like Fiverr has a problem because out of all those people, only then the person who said they were based in Nigeria was actually telling the truth. All the other 3, remember, they said they were based in Kenya, London, and the US. All 3 of them were also based in Nigeria. So this is a side note. If you're Nigerian and you're watching this, I have personally interacted with Nigerians in real life, and they've been wonderful people. And so I've never understood why people keep saying Nigerians are scammers until this incident, because I was like, how did I speak to 3 out of 4 people from Fiverr and all of them are Nigerians? Anyways, that's not the main point. I think that's an issue with Fiverr specifically, but also maybe it's a problematic issue across the continent where we're trying to be who we are not. Guys, that is not the way you get hired. You don't go lying about where you're from, right? You can't be a young Nigerian boy claiming to be in London, and then when I ask you, why does your profile say you're in London, you tell me, oh, I used to be a student there, and then I went back to Nigeria, and now I'm pursuing further studies, and now I'm building an animation company. No, guys, that is not how you stand out. You don't stand out by lying, okay? So anyways, there were 4 candidates that I spoke to. The first guy actually had a really high chance of being hired, and he wound up not qualifying for the 5th reason that I'm going to tell you about. First, let me tell you about the second guy, the guy from Kenya. His portfolio was the best. My client was really excited about this guy. He really wanted to meet this guy. Red flag number 1. He was just not responding to my messages. I was like, hey, we'd like to hire you. Are you available for a call? Blah, blah, blah. And he was just not responding to my messages. When he finally responds, he's like, I'm only available at this time. And it's like, okay, cool, I can respect that. Everybody is supposed to be responsible with their time. But there's a way in which he said it that kind of felt like he was brushing me off. And I was like, okay, great. Can you make accommodations for us and meet us at this time? Mind you, at this point, I'd already submitted all 4 portfolios to my client. So my client was really eager to meet this guy. This guy just he's ghosting me, and at that point I'm like, my fellow Kenyan, come on, why are we doing this? I'm over here trying to promote you out in these global streets, right? Eventually I had to kind of strong arm this guy and be like, hey dude, if you don't actually accept to show up on an interview, we're gonna have to pass up. And this guy's like, okay, fine, I'll show up. So that's what brings me to the challenge number 1. We are terrible in written communication. When you're working in a remote setting, one of the things that's very common is something called asynchronous communication, meaning people will read messages whenever they read their messages, but they have to be as prompt as possible. And because it's most of the time it's written, you need to actually be able to write clearly in an easy to follow way with good grammar. And so that's like this guy's lack of communication, first of all, and then two, like the way his messages just sounded rude. That was like a red flag for me. And like I myself was like, this dude, eh? So yeah, horrible written communication is, I think, one of the first things that will always disqualify us. And if you think about it, if you're working in a freelance perspective, you're using written communication to submit your proposal, right? Especially if you're working on a place like Upwork. If you're applying for a job, you need to write your cover letter. You need to have a written CV. Basically, everything starts with written communication. And if you cannot communicate in writing, you will automatically, always, without fail, be disqualified. And so a really simple way to fix this, other than of course trying to work on your grammar, because guys, listen, I understand that our education system is wanting and lacking in very many different ways, but we live in the day and age of LLMs. Write what you want to say and then go to something like ChatGPT and say, hey, ChatGPT, I'm trying to write this proposal, or I'm trying to write this cover letter. This is what I've written. Help me fix the grammar. And trust me, if you really struggle with written communication, ChatGPT will help you go a long way in improving that. And hopefully, if you're smart, whenever ChatGPT gives you back a response, actually study it and start to teach yourself how to write and communicate in a way that is clear, in a way that is concise, and in a way that is professional, so that you can actually be taken seriously, okay? So let's go back to this guy from Kenya, right? Eventually, this guy shows up to the call. Remember, he's the second guy we're talking to. I'm going to talk about the first guy later. This guy shows up to the call and he turns on the call, and like there's this whole motion of him like putting the phone down to talk to us. So 1, he's using his phone. 2, he didn't even bother to wipe the lens, so it's blurry and smudgy, and so we can't see him clearly. 3, it's like he was in the darkest corner of his living room with like the door to the outside open, so the light is behind him, so we can barely see this guy's face. Listen, it was a whole train wreck, and this is really like what brings me to point number 2. Video etiquette is important. Another thing that's part and parcel of working in the remote world is you have to show up on video calls, whether it's on Zoom, whether it's on Google Meet or any other platform. Heck, even if it's a basic WhatsApp video call, you need to show up on video on a regular basis when you're working in a remote setting. So for example, for me personally, in my day-to-day, every single day I have a meeting with my client in the morning, because as an executive assistant, that's how we set up what we're going to do for the day, right? Because of that, we have to see each other on video. It's one of the things that helps to build relationships when you're working in a remote setting. But now, if someone can't see you, if someone cannot hear you, then they are going to be distracted by the fact that they can't see you, they can't hear you, and so they can't connect with you, okay? Then let me tell you one other thing that this guy from Kenya did. At some point in the middle of the call, someone walks behind him and starts talking to him. And I kid you not, this guy turns around, starts talking to this other guy, and then just talking to this other guy. And then eventually it goes, what are you saying now? And you're like, sorry, what? Like, guys, can we just not? Do you see me right now on your screen? I am using my phone. So even if all you have is your phone, there's still things you can do to make sure you show up properly. Invest in a cheap phone stand. Like in this creator day and age, you can get a cheap phone stand, or if you really don't want to spend any money, get a stack of books, okay, and prop up your camera at eye level. Do you see that I'm at eye level? There's something psychologically that happens when the lens is at the same level as at your eye. It makes the other person feel like they are talking to an equal. If the phone is too high, you yourself look like you are what's the word? You look small and timid and inferior, which doesn't give you a good look for being professional. If you put your phone too low, on the other hand, you look like you're literally looking down on someone, and it makes the other person feel like you're condescending them, okay? So keep the camera at eye level. Make sure your face is well lit, not your back. Remember, I told you this guy had the door behind him, like bright blasting behind us. When that happens, you become a shadow. And listen, guys, Africans, do you see my beautiful melanin skin? This is what we look like, and cameras don't know what to do with us when there isn't enough light. So we need tons of light on our faces, okay? So you need to make sure that your face is well lit. Sit in front of a window. You don't even have to buy lights. Just sit in front of a window. Make sure you're in a quiet environment, okay? Respect the fact that you're speaking to someone else who you are supposed to offer a service in a professional setting. Just think about it this way. If you are meeting a businessman in real life for like coffee or a lunch date or even an interview or something, wouldn't you want to pay them your full attention? Well, guess what? The same exact thing happens in the remote space. You have to show the person that you're paying attention to them. So you need to have zero distractions. You can't have someone like this guy that you talk to like this. And guys, listen. It just doesn't work. Like, depending on the company you work for, eventually it might be possible for you to like show a bit of your personality in the background. Like, oh, I have a kid. Like, for example, for me, there's a time I didn't have help and my baby decided to wake up during a call with my boss. But this was like weeks later. And so because I'd built enough rapport, I was able to hop on the call and be like, hey, I'm so sorry. I usually have help during my calls. But right now I don't, and my baby's awake. I hope you don't mind. She's in the background and she might join us on the call. But this is like this is more than 2 months of me being in the company and building a rapport with this person. And so he was like, oh yeah, that's absolutely fine. And so when my baby eventually showed up on the call, they're like, oh, that's so cute and everything. But like, this is after building a relationship. In the beginning, zero distractions, okay? If you must postpone a call so that you can have time and help to make sure your background is distraction free, do it. If you must go and move to someone else's house, do it. Just have proper video etiquette. It's an important thing. Otherwise, you just show up as unprofessional. And when you show up as unprofessional, not a single person's gonna pay you because they're like, if you can't carry yourself well, how can I trust you to carry my project well, okay? Right? I hope, I'm really belaboring this point because I think for me that was probably the most shocking thing that I'd ever seen. Like, I'm so used to working with people in the Western world, and it's always such a professional setting, that this guy just genuinely shocked me. And now imagine I'm being shocked as a fellow African. Imagine people from Europe. Imagine people from the US. Like, listen, nobody's gonna hire you when you don't fix your video etiquette, okay? So having proper video etiquette is only one of the things that shows people on the other side that you are actually a professional. And that brings me really to my third point. As Africans, we tend to show up as being not professional. Let me explain. In a remote setting, people are looking for solutions, and they're looking for solutions fast, okay? That's usually why they decide to hire remotely, especially when you're in a freelance capacity. However, when you come in with this air of, I just want to take your money, and I promise I can do everything. Like, for example, one of the guys that that I interviewed that day, I think he was the third guy, the guy who claimed to be from London. And I asked him, where are you from? And he's like, anyways, never mind. So this guy, I was like, so I'd ask him like, okay, so tell me about your background in animation. It was for an animation project. Yeah. I've done a lot of animation works, and I promise I can do it for you. I can do it for you as well. It won't even be expensive. It's going to be very cheap. I'm like, okay, great. So can you tell me about one of the projects you worked on? Yeah, I worked on so many projects. There are so many I can't even think of them. But yeah, I promise I can do this job for you. And I'm like, you're not giving me any answers at all. And so because of that, I was like, if you can't tell me a story with very clear examples of A, your process, B, what the client needed, C, like the results that the client had, etc., etc. If you cannot demonstrate that to me, then I'm not going to trust you with my money. And I think that's something that most of us maybe we don't know. I don't know. Someone please tell me in the comments, is this not common knowledge? Like, have I been in this remote game so long that I am actually out of touch? Please let me know in the comments. But the way you signal professionalism is you need to put on what I like to call your consultant hat. This is what consultants do when they're working with you. They'll come to the conversation and ask you questions. It's like a doctor. When you go to the doctor doesn't immediately say, oh, you have tuberculosis, and they've not done a single test on you. That's like if a doctor came to you and said that, you'd be like, I'm sorry, what? I'm not even coughing. How did you get to TB, right? No. When you go to a doctor, they're going to ask you, okay, Tell me about your symptoms. Okay, where does it hurt? Okay, does it hurt? Is it a sharp pain? Is it a dull pain? Is it intermittent, or does it go away after a while? Okay, great. How about we run this test? Let me check your temperature. Let me check your weight. By the way, are you pooping? What kind of poop is it? Etc. Etc. They get that deep in your business. Okay, that's what doctors do. They ask about your poop. Anyways, consultants essentially do the exact same thing. Let's pretend you who's watching this, you've come to me asking me for my graphic design services. I'm not going to immediately tell you like, oh, I'm such a wonderful graphic designer and I've designed for very, very many clients and they're all very, very happy. Are you going to buy from me? Seriously, think about it. You're not going to buy from me. Instead, I as a professional will come to be like, hey, thank you for coming to the call and everything. So before I tell you about what I can do, I'd love to get to know your business and the problems that you're facing. Okay, tell me about your business. You tell me about your business. Okay, great. What's the biggest challenge you've been having? You tell me about the business challenge. Okay, great. Have you hired graphic designers in the past before? Yes or no? Okay, great. You hired. What was your experience? What went wrong? What did you like? What did you not like? Okay, great. Now let's talk about the project. When do you want it delivered? What's it for? Is it going on social media or is it going on a billboard? Etc. etc. I need to get all of that context as a consultant. And then when I take that context in, then I'm able to say like, okay, great. Thank you so much for sharing. Based on what you said, I think A would be the first step, then B, then C, then D. My goal is that I will take you from A to D, and this is the potential impact, and this is how it aligns with the problem that you're trying to solve right now. And for me to offer that solution to you, I'm going to charge you only $5,000. How does that sound? Listen, you as the person on the other side, because I was so first of all, let me know in the comments, how professional did that feel, even though there wasn't like that was me literally just skimming through how it goes. You're gonna trust me more because automatically by me asking you questions, you're feeling like I actually care. And because you can tell I'm listening to your answers, you can tell that I care, you can tell that I'm methodical, I am professional, and all of these things, okay? So we need to adopt that kind of mindset as Africans when we're working with people in the remote space. Because again, remember, the remote space is so huge, so ubiquitous. At the end of the day, every client is simply looking for a solution to any problem that they have. And depending on how big the problem is, they will pay whatever it takes. But they will only pay whatever it takes when you convince them that they can trust you. You show them that they can trust you by being a consultant. That is how you show that you are a professional. So out of the 4 people that we interviewed, only one guy came close, the guy who was actually a Nigerian. He's the only one who at this point didn't have any of these red flags. The other 3, I kid you not, was just nope. So now speaking of the first guy, let me actually dive into why he got disqualified. At the end of the day, that first guy that we interviewed, the guy who was actually from Nigeria, who, by the way, let me just go back to the communication thing. This guy was highly communicative, and if it were up to me, I would have hired this guy simply because of how willing he was to communicate with me. Any question I asked him, he explained it to me. There's a point because I'm not familiar with 3D animation and how it works. There's something specific my client wanted that I didn't understand. So I actually went to this guy and I was like, hey, can you explain what this is to me? And this guy was like, okay, it's going to be difficult for me to explain it succinctly, but basically, and he did his best and gave me like a 3-paragraph message explaining exactly what it was I was asking. And I was like, that was him essentially, 1, acting as a consultant. So he was very professional. 2, he took the time to actually explain and answer my question with very good grammar. 3, he was very fast with his communication. So as far as communication and professionalism were concerned, this guy was it. And even when he showed up on the video call, yes, he was using his phone, but there were 0 distractions. He was well lit. You could see him. He was smiling, like he showed up on time. But the thing that threw him off was, out of all the 4, his portfolio was the weakest. Okay. And again, like I said, I personally would have hired him despite his weak portfolio. But again, I was not the person who was doing the hiring. I wasn't the one writing the check. I was only shortlisting. And that really brings me to problem number 4 that we have. I think, generally have a lack of some of these essential skills that we need to work in a remote setting. Now, I know the project I'm referencing was specific to something really technical like 3D animation, but I've noticed that it actually spans across on basic things like, do you know your keyboard shortcuts when you're working in a Google Doc? Just think about that. Like, for real, for real. Do you know how to use keyboard shortcuts in a Google Doc? Do you have basic Google Sheets or Excel sheet knowledge, right? Can you come up with a basic design in something like Canva? Are you able to use scheduling tools? How effective are you in using something as basic as Google Calendar? Can you schedule a call with the right title, the right time for the different time zones that you're working with? Because remember, your clients are remote. So are you able to coordinate the different time zones? Do you add an agenda to the call? Are you able to share the link and make sure that it's live? Some of these basic skills, you would be so shocked how few of us actually have those skills. And this is something that I actually caught on to last year, because as part of me doing my career pivot from marketing into being an executive assistant, I actually took part in ALX's virtual assistant program. It's a fantastic program. But one of the things that I noticed was it was aimed at someone who has zero knowledge of some of these basic skills. And like legit, we were being taught things as basic as, this is how you go and open a Google Drive. Inside the Google Drive, you can create folders and docs and Excel sheets and slides, and we had lessons on all of those things. And again, I appreciate the fact that they took that approach. They clearly know what the problem is. The problem is we don't have basic skills. If you really, really need to upskill in some of these basic things, I highly recommend you try out the ALX virtual assistant program. Even if you're not planning to be a virtual assistant, it's gonna teach you the basic etiquette of what it means to work remotely online, okay? Because trust me, those basic things will disqualify you. And on the flip side, when you do have those basic skills, and if you excel at those basic skills, you will shine so bright. There's a point I had become so streamlined in my freelancing, I simply had to send a client one link, and from that one link, they were able to schedule a call with me, get automatic reminders on email. Those reminders were actually educational emails that they were getting from me. When they showed up to the call, I showed up on time. They came and found I had a presentation ready for them. I asked them a bunch of questions, etc., etc. After the call, they got automatic emails from me. If they decided to sign with me, literally live on the call, it could literally happen live on the call if they wanted to, I'd send them a link, and this actually happened with one of my clients. I'd send them a link and it would take them immediately to their contract. Once they sign the contract, the next page is an invoice. They put in their details, they pay me, pap, and we're done. In the space of like 10 minutes, we have a contract signed and we have the first invoice paid. That's like when you do things to that level, you will shine, and that will actually help you to command much higher prices, which actually brings me to my fifth issue that I've seen with us Africans: pricing and positioning. Guys, let me give you a quick little masterclass, like a 2-second masterclass in human psychology. Have you ever heard of the idea that when something is priced more expensively, it is seen as being more valuable? Just think about it. Why do gold things cost 5 times, 10 times, 100 times more than your basic silver or brass or anything else? Honestly, it's not because gold is that rare. Gold is actually a very common thing, but because someone decided somewhere that, hey, gold is expensive, and so by simply putting on a higher price tag, the value of gold seems to be that high. It's basically the same thing with diamonds. It's because human beings are strange like that. When something is priced higher, we assume it's better. But now the thing with us Africans is we kind of assume that we can't command the same prices as people who are based abroad. But here's the thing, here's my honest personal belief, right? If you have made it this far in the video and you're thinking to yourself like, everything you've said above, I already have in place, the only thing holding you back is your belief in the worth of your work. You are as good as anybody anywhere else in the world, and you need to charge accordingly. Guys, I kid you not, I used to think that I used to believe that I could never charge as much as people in like the States, for example, just because I'm based here in Africa. But again, like I said earlier in the video, clients are not interested in where you're located. They're interested in you solving a problem for them. And this unlock started for me when I once had a client, when I was working on Upwork, I once had a client who would pay me $100 every week to write for him one article, which was $400 a month, which doesn't sound like much, except when you consider the fact that while I was working, I was also pregnant with my second born, and I continued on after having this baby, and it would only take me 2 hours to write each article. So if I'm being paid $100 for one article and I'm writing it in 2 hours, that's effectively an hourly rate of $50 an hour. So for basically 8 to 10 hours in a month, I was able to make $400. Do that math. That was when it unlocked for me, and I was like, wait, it's not about how much time I actually put into what I'm doing. It's about the value and the impact of my output. And once you realize that, then you can start to charge accordingly. And accordingly does not mean you have just enough money to put your food on the table. Allow yourself to dream of what it's like to earn at the level of someone in the States, here in Africa, and now think about how different your life would be. Guys, I'm not going to be out here and tell you that I have reached that level consistently, but I've had a taste of it. One of my highest paying clients agreed to pay me $2,500 for 2 weeks worth of work. And in those 2 weeks, I kid you not, I was working like 4 hours a day. It's possible even for us. If you do all the previous things right and you get them in place, and by the way, let me just say, please first do all the 4 things that I talked about first, otherwise there's no point. But if you do all of those 4 things and you practice them, then your only remaining step is just position yourself as valuable and charge according to charge at the rate of someone who is actually offering value. And the way you offer value is by solving real problems for your clients. Okay? At the end of the day, the 5 things that I noticed that are problems are not things that are inherent to us. It's not, these aren't problems that are stuck to you like the color of your skin, okay? These are all skill-based things. These are things that you can learn over time. I don't think I mentioned it in this video, but I've been working remotely since 2017, and it's basically taken me all of that time to come to these conclusions. So give yourself some grace, give yourself some time, but I encourage you, please. In fact, I implore you, I beg you, please. We need more Africans in the remote space. Please take what I'm taking and commit to learning. Commit yourself to improving. Commit yourself to improving your communication skills, both written and oral. Use platforms like Duolingo if you want to improve your English. Please learn good video etiquette. A simple way to do this is every time you have a WhatsApp call with your friend, just pretend you're talking to a client and just get it all set up for yourself, or just record videos of yourself and practice talking to a camera. 3, learn what it means to be a professional in a remote work setting. Act as a consultant, ask questions, find ways to solve problems that a client is facing. And a quick tip for you, the bigger the problem you solve, the higher you can charge. Okay, someone who is offering a service of making basic Canva designs using the built-in templates is going to charge way less than someone who is building a 3D animated website that is interactive and is rivaling Google. That guy can charge even 10K by his whole self, whereas you, who is over here using Canva templates, at best you can charge, $50 for 10 images. So think about ways you can improve your skills as a result. And I guess that's number 4. Just find ways to always improve your skills. If you need basic admin skills, try out something like ALX's VA program. Even if you're not planning to become a virtual assistant, just go through that program for purposes of learning. I can attest to that one because I personally did that program, and it is fantastic for giving you a foundation of what it's like to work in a remote setting. And then finally, understand the value of your worth. Just because you're based here in Africa does not mean that your work is not valuable. It is. At the end of the day, as long as you're solving a problem for a client, then your work is worth the same rate as anyone anywhere in the world. So I hope these 5 things were really helpful for you, and please go ahead and practice them. Now, I know some of you have been watching this and you're thinking to yourself okay, Jojo, you've been working in the remote space for 7 years. Some of us have never even had the chance to do that. Well, for you, I say, one of the best things you can do is to go behind the scenes with some people. And lucky for you, I have this video which you can watch right here, where I take you behind the scenes in my day-to-day as an executive assistant, one of the days actually, when I was learning how to use DeepSeek for the first time. So go ahead and watch that, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.